Hey, welcome to Nerd Wave Radio, right here on Blog Talk Radio in the Road Less Traveled. I'm Derek. This is Terry.
Howdy.
We are 2 weeks in a row here.
Yeah, we're on a roll.
We're on a row! 2 weeks in a row.
Nobody's been sick. There's no appointments coming up. So.
That's exactly right. Nothing was happening on Monday night. It is Monday night, May 4th, 2000.
Oh.
And what, is it not 2015?
Yes, it is, but gotta say it. May the 4th be with you.
May the 4th
Sounds like you're lisping.
be with you.
It's a Jedi
That's
with
a
a
great
lisp.
That's a great episode on a Big Bang Theory.
Yes.
May the 4th.
May the 4th.
See, I don't catch on to that much because I hate Star Wars.
Oh.
I said it. I just said it. I don't hate Star Wars.
I don't hate it.
This is a big day in Star Wars lore. May the 4th be with you.
I'm looking forward to the new movie.
I am not. I don't care.
Oh, I am.
I will go see it.
I want to see how Disney does.
Disney's doing it. That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
I saw they have the cute little round robot. So
yes,
that's a Disney touch for sure.
If you want to get a hold of us, you can do so by going to nerdwavetonight@gmail.com. Email us. Let us know what we're doing right. Let us know what we're doing wrong. Tell us how much you hate us because I don't like Star Wars. I don't know. I think probably most people are saying to themselves, how in the world can a guy do a Nerd Wave radio and not like Star Wars?
That's a valid point. That's a valid point.
It's a valid point. Because that's the thing that we talk about all the time. What exactly qualifies you to be a nerd?
Well, I don't know. I don't think you can't like everything. I probably stepped on some toes right there. But you're gonna have your favorites.
Yeah,
I'm Star Trek.
I am Star Trek too. I'm a huge Next Generation fan. I've seen them all. Seen them all. If you do want to find out more things about Nerdwave Radio, you can do that by going to nerdwaveradio.com. Nerdwaveradio.com. All things nerdy on there. All things about us. The new YouTube from last week's show is on. You can listen to Blog Talk Radio from nerdwaveradio.com. You can check out all the other nerd websites that we have. Nerdbastards.com. Bloody Disgusting. Last week we talked about Just Nerdy or something like that. I can't remember what it was. This week I've got another website that we're going to be talking about. We like to share all the nerd websites with you. And you can always check out our schedule, do all kinds of things. You can also follow us on Facebook at Nerdwave Radio. Check that out. You can follow things that we're looking at. You can also listen to the show straight from Facebook. Also, if you want to check us out on your mobile device, just go to m.nerdwaveradio.com. A whole bunch of social things, social media that you can check us out on.
That's a lot to keep track of.
It is a huge amount to keep track of, but I do it.
You do.
Last week we talked, what did we talk about? What did we talk? We talked about Age of Ultron.
Yes, which I still have not seen.
I have seen Age of Ultron, and we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. But last week we started something brand new, and we really blew it.
We did.
Not really, but it was fun. But we're going to trying to get it better this week. The Super Fight cards. We did these last week, and we weren't really sure who won, except you got France and screwed up the whole thing.
Yeah, well, how can you, as a continent, how can you do pretty much anything?
I don't know. So what we're going to do is, if I can remember this right, Super Fight cards, Harry Marlowe, guy who used to be in charge here at Nerdwave Radio, with Harry Marlowe, gave us this package of Super Fight cards. This is a huge big deal in the nerd realm for some people. Some people it's not, but here's what we're going to do. Just pick a black card. We're just gonna pick a black card. Just any card. Pick a card, any card. Don't tell me what it is. Just pick it. Tell me if you had it before. And then we're gonna try and
as long as it's not France.
That's exactly right. Okay, so now you've got some sort of a weapon. So pick a white card. Pick a white card.
I'll take that one right there.
I'm gonna take this one right here.
Okay.
I'm going to take another one because I have absolutely no idea what that is. Okay, I got that. I'm going to pick a blue card.
It's a type of bird.
Pick a blue card. Okay. So now you've got probably a place, a person, and some sort of weapon.
I do.
I'm going to tell you what I am. I am on, this is important too, and I think these go hand in hand. I think I got you here. Because I've already figured out how these things go together. I am on Mars colony, okay? I am a sushi chef, armed with a really, really bright laser pointer.
I think I've got you.
No, I've already figured out how I've got this one. What do you have?
I am deep in the Amazon rainforest.
Okay.
I am a grizzly bear.
Ah.
And I throw water balloons filled with acid.
Okay. Now, the thing with Super Fight is, the thing that you try and do is to figure out who possibly could win. I think this is so simple because obviously I would win. One, because you can't throw a balloon filled with acid all the way to Mars. Right?
Well, that's true.
But as a sushi chef, I am so skilled in like the finer cuttings. I would take my really, really, really bright laser pointer and slice you up all the way from Mars.
I would have to be a bright laser pointer.
It says right here. It uses two words, really, really.
It does. Really, really bright.
So I think that the only problem is I don't think those laser pointers are very powerful enough to maybe cut up.
Yeah.
So as with, I think this game all the time, I would call it a draw. We would be happy to stay where we're at, much like last week when I was a group of piranhas who decided to stay in the ocean, and you were King Arthur, who was happy to stay on the deserted island.
Right.
You stay on land, I stay on water, and we'll live happily ever after.
There you go. So you stay on Mars, I'll stay deep in the Amazon rainforest.
And we will live happily ever.
Do they have grizzly bears in the rainforest? I don't think so.
Absolutely not.
Well, I'm pretty sure they wouldn't throw water balloons filled with acid.
Where would they get the acid?
I don't know.
Where would they get the water balloons? Who taught them how to throw? What's going on in the Amazon that we don't know about?
That'd be more where your piranhas would be at.
Exactly. That's how you play Super Fight. Today was a draw. Last week I won because France, which Terry was...
I was a continent.
You gave up. Absolutely gave up. He gave up. Again, you are listening to Nerdwave Radio. I'm Derek. This is Terry beside me, and we are talking today about something that I think most people in nerddom don't really know about, minus comic books,
okay,
minus graphic novels, okay? We're going to talk about science fiction literature.
Oh,
actual literature. Remember the old thing that used to do by reading? Remember that?
You mean
now,
books?
I do know this about you. You are a voracious reader.
Yes. Love to read.
You love to read.
Now I read on my iPhone.
Okay, now you just ruined it.
Well, no, I still love, given a choice, I'd rather have a book.
Yeah.
But
I read on my Nook.
Okay, yeah. But when I'm out and about, this is easy. I'm killing time at the doctor's office. It makes it so much easier, I must admit.
What is the genre that you read most of all?
Probably science fiction.
Okay.
Fantasy.
I asked my wife in preparation of this show, I asked her, what do you consider science fiction literature to be? What has to be in science fiction literature? Because I believe that I think most nerds, I think we've got most nerds here, except for the huge Tolkien fans, which I am.
Right.
C.S. Lewis fans. I would say most science fiction nerds are into the movies, into the comic books,
right,
into the graphic novels. To pick up a book, even nowadays, I'll bet you most of the nerds will say, yes, I read Tolkien, when I was in 5th grade.
Yeah, it was made to for a English project.
Okay, or The Hobbit, or the Chronicles of Narnia, any of those. But to read things like Coma, or some of those
Jurassic
other ones,
Park.
and Jurassic Park. So what I asked her was, what exactly do you consider a science fiction book to be about? What has to be in a science fiction literature, and is that different than what a science fiction movie is?
Oh, I don't think so. No,
it's the same?
I would say they're the same. You got to pretty much have the same elements.
Okay, let me ask you this then, because this is what I ask her. And we have him up here, Tolkien. Is Tolkien's Lord of the Rings science fiction literature?
No.
Why?
I'd say fantasy.
What's the difference? What is the difference?
Well, fantasy is something that, dragons, wizards, whatnot, aren't real. Whereas science fiction is stuff that is plausible, that could be.
Oh, okay.
Although some it'll push the limit sometimes. You'll have science fiction that pushes it into fantasy.
Is the Blob science fiction?
Yes, because he came from outer space. Or it.
And that's,
I don't know if it was a boy or a girl.
And that's more plausible than a dragon.
Yes, it is.
See, that's what I don't get. That's what I don't get that.
I don't know if it's plausible.
Not that I want to beat a dead horse. But I'm going to beat a dead horse with this. Okay. Then we got into a discussion about this whole idea of mythology.
Right.
And I had told you, and we talked about this after our show last week, a good friend of mine, Harry Marlowe, used to be on Nerdwave Radio here with me, loves to talk about the mythology of Star Wars.
Now, is that meaning like what it's based on? Based on stuff?
That's what I don't know. You have obviously Tolkien and Lord of the Rings, and when you use the word mythology for that, I think that's very understandable.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
When we think of mythology, we think of some sort of unbelievable or non-plausible beginnings of how something came about.
Right.
That's the mythology of it. You could think of Clash of the Titans.
Yeah, definitely Greek mythology.
Greek mythology. How did things come about? That's pretty easy.
So then would the episodes 1, 2, and 3, or would those be kind of the building of the mythology?
Building of a mythology. And so what I did was I went to find out on Google, because Google knows everything, what exactly is the definition of mythology. And it said, a collection of such stories. Mythology is a vital feature of every culture. Various origins for myths have been proposed, ranging from personification of nature, personification of natural phenomenon, to truthful or hyperbolic accounts of historical events, to explanations of existing ritual. So a mythology tells us why we act the way that we do.
Right. How something came about.
How something came about. And there's no doubt that within Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, there is a mythology. There is no doubt within C.S. Lewis, there is a mythology of how Narnia came about.
Right.
We were talking last week about Tolkien's works afterwards, after he died and his son Christopher took over, the mythology of the Silmarillion.
Yes.
So, when you and we also talked about how Tolkien yearned for England to have a mythology, and it didn't. It just didn't, and so he wanted to create a mythology.
Well, now, what would King Arthur be?
King Arthur was actually stole from France before they gave up.
Okay.
Probably they gave it to England. That's a big mishmash. King Arthur and
well, that's right. I have read where they think that's
it is a big mishmash of French mythology. England really didn't have its own mythology, but you think of certain places around the world that you think of could have a mythology. You think of Scotland and Ireland and deep in the moors of back in the times of the knights and a mythology of how England came about. Of course, America doesn't have a mythology. No. We just left from England and came over. It's not old enough to have a mythology.
Right. What about Robin Hood? Or is that's more modern time? That was just a story.
That's just a story.
Never mind.
Yeah. But you get into reading these science fictions, and it's easy for me to tell the difference between, for example, Stephen King. So a lot of Stephen King literature. Do you read Stephen King?
I used to, not so much anymore.
Is that science fiction?
No.
What is that?
His was more of a horror type thing.
Okay. Okay, so that's a horror genre.
Well, he had some kind of science fiction one. I can't think of the name of the books.
Do you know, I think the Cowboy Kid or the Colorado Kids, which is now a show called, it's not Fringe, it's another show that I can't remember, but it's based on the Colorado Kids. And there's stories, what they basically are stories of this paranormal phenomenon.
Right.
Is it safe to say, is it too easy to say, is it wrong to say that science fiction has to have some sort of science element to it?
I think so.
So is that what makes it part of that?
I looked it up here.
Yeah.
Science fiction based on imagined future scientific or technological advances and major social or environmental changes.
Okay.
Frequently portraying space or time travel and life on other planets.
So it's something much like Star Trek The Next Generation that we look at and say, okay, this is the way that it could be.
Right.
This is exactly the thing that Roddenberry thought about when he thought about this utopian world or utopian universe that these federations of planets had, and we had phasers, and we have no need for money. We have these starships that can fly, 9 times, 10 times the speed of light.
Right.
So it has to have that element to it. Otherwise, it's fantasy.
Yes.
There has to be this possibility that
a slight possibility.
Back to the Future and my hoverboard.
Right. There's a possibility that could happen.
It did. There is a hoverboard.
Well, they do, yeah.
They have a hoverboard now. So science fiction, in the reading of science fiction then, is reading of things that could be.
Right.
Whereas fantasy and mythology is the reading of things that have been.
I think so.
Or usually. Could have been.
Yeah, it could have been.
Isn't it just as plausible to say, if there's,
that there might have been dragons?
Exactly.
Yes, it's entirely plausible.
Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones. You seen the dragons on Game of Thrones?
I've seen stills. I've only just started watching them. I'm only up to like my, I think season, or not season. I'm still in the first season.
Winter is coming.
Yeah. Yeah. And Jon Snow knows nothing.
Absolutely.
See, now I get most of my stuff is from memes that I catch on the internet. So.
And here's the thing, it's basically medieval porn.
Yeah, I did catch that.
That's what Game of Thrones.
Probably why it's so popular.
But what I'm saying is it easier to believe that we could, when you're reading these stories, and I don't know, whether it's a money-making deal or not, but there are Star Wars books.
Right.
There are Star Trek books.
Yep.
Next Generation books that you can pick up and you can read of actual episodes and episodes that never aired.
Right. Just stories.
There's stories that fit into the Star Trek Next Generation universe.
Correct.
And it is easier for you to pick one of those up and read and believe that there might be a starship that somehow flies 10 times the speed of light, but there could have never been dragons.
Pretty much. Well, there's always a part of you that likes to think there were dragons at one point.
That's my point on the reading of science fiction. Isn't science fiction literature to get you to think about those things that could be?
Right.
Right? Yeah, I mean, that's the excitement of it. We always love to see in Star Trek The Next Generation how they explained these things, or you read it, even the Blob, even books, and I'm not even sure if it was a book, but obviously it's published, War of the Worlds, the radio program that came on. People believed that was happening with Orson Welles, and there was always this love of literature that says this comes from outer space, or zombies we've talked about before. Is that science fiction?
I think that's more horror.
That's horror.
Yeah.
And there is this belief that this could somehow come about, but yet people sometimes get turned off on the mythology of it. And of course, as Harry Marlowe was saying, that he believes that Star Wars, that really there can't be one without the other. I mean, doesn't everything come from a beginning? Doesn't everything have a mythology? It doesn't matter how far you've gone in time.
Right.
There is a mythology of Star Trek The Next Generation. Doesn't there have to be? They talk about it all the time. They bring back, because Picard incessantly loves Shakespeare. Loves the mythology of the Henrys, of the kings, of the War of the Roses, that built on until it got to a point that we now have starships that fly 10 times the speed.
Right.
So in a way, I guess my question is, are we now the mythology of futuristic science fiction? And is that what draws us to it?
Oh yeah, it's always evolving.
Is it the science part that you like? Is that what the nerds? Is that what the nerds like? Is the science part of it?
I would say so. Yeah, because I like the ideas that they.
I love the idea of the holodeck.
Yeah, that one thrills me beyond measure. But and then just the way that they'll even explain how this could work. You actually realize they actually think faster than light speed is possible now. NASA is actually looking at that. NASA.
Only because of Star Trek. Do you remember?
Possible, yeah.
Do you remember The Fly?
Oh yeah, the original or
the one
I know both. So.
With what was it? Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, Jeff Goldblum.
That was a good one.
That's a good one.
That's science fiction.
Yeah. Yes. Because he was working with a teleporter.
That whole idea of the teleporter. And of course, that fits into Star Trek The Next Generation so much. Because, I think one of the things that really draws people to science fiction is just what we've been talking about, that idea of being able to read and somehow fall into this imagination or this imaginative world to think that someday I may see this.
Right. I hope to.
But yet with mythology, I'm never going to get a chance to see a dragon again.
Right. Unless it happened to be on another world.
Which would fall under science fiction.
True.
So
there have been plenty of stories
if
like
Tolkien's world wouldn't have been built around the Shire and the long yearnings of England gone by, but yet on another world called Kronos, or another world called Vulcan, or another world called Romulus, then perhaps it would be science fiction. Because we could still someday go to that planet.
Yeah. I would say, that classifies it as science fiction. It's on another world now.
And that's all we did to the story.
Yeah, just moved it to a different planet.
We just moved it to a different planet, and now we've changed its genre. That doesn't seem right to me.
I know. It does seem a little backwards, doesn't it?
I've now talked you out of it.
I don't know. I'm so confused now.
What I really wanted to ask you about was just this differentiation between reading and seeing. So let's take some science fiction that you've read. And we're not talking comic books here. We're not talking The Avengers.
Yeah, we're talking books.
We're not talking Age of Ultron, which we'll get to after the break. We're talking about a book maybe that's been turned into a movie. An older book, science fiction that you've read, that they made a movie of.
Well, one you just spoke of, War of the Worlds.
War of the Worlds, the Tom Cruise one or the black and white one?
I think actually it was color.
Was it color?
They were both color. Yeah.
They were both color.
1954, 1963.
Do you remember? I know that there, and I don't know the story, but I know that you've seen it. I don't know if it was a book or a story, but I know it was an old black and white movie because I've seen them both. I can't remember the name of it, but the newest one had Keanu Reeves in it, and he came.
Oh, The Day the Earth Stood Still.
The day that was his name Garp, not Keanu Reeves, but the big giant.
The big giant was Gort.
Gort.
G-O-R-T. Gort.
Gort.
Yeah.
Was that just a movie, or was that The Day the Earth Stood Still? Was that a book?
I think that was just a movie.
Okay.
I don't remember ever reading the book.
So let's talk about War of the Worlds.
Okay.
Did you read that?
Yes, I read it. And for me, the reason I always think a book is better than the movie is I get more out of my imagination, imagining these people going through this, and I can hear their voices. Mm-hmm. Although honestly, after I watch the movie, their voices sometimes will become, Gandalf's voice becomes Gandalf's voice.
Right. And a movie kind of ruins that for you a little bit. Because, especially like Lord of the Rings, I did it in a backwards way. I saw the movies first and loved them so much and went back and read the books. Fell in love with the books, absolutely loved the books.
Right.
And yet when I went back, it was impossill not to hear Gandalf, not to hear,
and some of them have been good. Ian McKellen did a great Gandalf. I love his voice. So that one didn't ruin anything for me. There have been a few, though. I can't remember. Well, which I still think is a good one. The original Batman with Michael
Keaton. That was absolutely horrible.
I kind of liked it, but Michael Keaton wasn't the best, I didn't think.
No.
But his voice for me threw off all the Batman comic books I'd ever read. It just wasn't quite right.
So you came at it from that which you read.
Right.
I never read comic books when I was a kid, but always have loved superhero movies.
Right.
I was introduced to superheroes by watching them. Adam West.
Right.
What's his name as even the black and white as Superman. Spider-Man in the cartoon.
Yeah.
What was his George Reeves?
Yeah, George Reeves.
George Reeves was the guy who played Superman. And so I never read. I don't think I've ever read science fiction. I love mythology.
Right.
And so I love to read mythology, but you read a lot of science fiction. Mm-hmm. And I think it is that point that, and I don't know if that's the nerd part about it, and I'm not sure if that's why sometimes you will say, and most people will say, God, the book was so much better. Because the movie has now boxed in that character.
Yeah, right.
Thor is, what's his name? Tony Stark is Robert Downey Jr.
But he does it good.
He does.
I gotta admit, he plays a great Tony Stark.
But there are other ones, just like which Batman is they changed it so much. Am I Adam West? Am I Michael Keaton? Am I George Clooney? Am I Val Kilmer? Am I Christian Bale? Am I? Oh, God forbid! Am I Ben Affleck?
I want to see his. He's got the chin. I'm hoping he can pull it off.
See, for me, the movie Batman is Christian Bale. I'm Batman. I mean, that's
right.
He's the one
that
I like. Tony Stark, I love Iron Man.
Yeah.
I love the slot machine Iron Man. If you've never played it, it's so fun.
Oh, I never.
Oh, you've never played the
No.
slot machine?
I thought that was like a character for a minute that I missed. What? Slot
No,
machine?
you know, like Cripple
See, like
Creek.
a transformer?
No, it's so fun because the big jackpot comes. Remember the line from the first movie? That's how Dad did it. That's how America does it. And it's worked out so far. And he says,
Right.
I give for your proposal the Jericho. And all these missiles comes down. They all turn wild. It's just, there are more and more superhero slot machines now because that's the big thing.
Yeah, that's the big thing.
That's the big thing. And they do all these neat things. But I've always felt like I could look at a book and see science fiction.
Right.
So what I asked my wife was this. Nowadays, YA books are so big, and my wife loves to read them.
Oh, the young adults.
Yes.
Why?
I'm sorry. Young adults.
A ya book.
But what about like Hunger Games? Is that science fiction?
Yes.
What about, okay, so that's because it's the future?
Because it's the future. Kind of a dystopian future, but it's a future.
Okay. Insurgent.
Another dystopian future. Yes.
And because of the science that exists within it?
I think so, yeah. Just the plausibility of it as well.
What if they took the science out of it? What if it was the story of the future, but like
Just a normal...
war riddled, like
Oh.
nuclear war had and shot them back to the Stone Age, but it's 2352.
I think that's still science fiction.
But there's no science in it. What if it's the story of them just trying to survive by beating each other with clubs?
And now your dragons are mutants.
Exactly.
I think it's still science fiction.
I got my dragons.
You got your dragons. I think it's still science fiction though,
Now,
because they've mutated, and that's a science.
This discussion doesn't change anything in the love of reading science fiction or the love of reading mythology. But what I do hear in the nerddom out there is a lot of people fighting about those things, about the whole idea of, oh, that's not science fiction, that's fantasy. Get your vocabulary right.
Right.
And I think my point is when you read a book, whether it's reading Tolkien or whether it's reading any other type of science fiction, isn't it all still though open to the imagination? Don't you have because you don't know how a phaser works or what a phaser looks like when you begin to read.
Right.
You have to imagine that. In the same manner, you don't know what a dragon looks like.
Right. You have to imagine it.
You have to imagine that. And so isn't all fiction then just imagination?
Oh, well, yeah. Oh, definitely. Whether it's science fiction, fantasy.
And the only thing then that gets you to decide one way or the other of what you like then is simply whether it's futuristic,
right,
or
set in medieval times or farther back.
It's set in medieval times,
right?
Because what I get from this plausibility thing is, besides the dragons, besides the other things, mythology is based on the plausibility, though, of this could have been. This is how we got here.
Right, right.
And so I don't see that there's a big, giant disconnect between science. Are you a crossover reader, or do you say, you know what, science fiction is my thing?
Oh, no, I'm a crossover reader. I read everything. Anything I can get my hands on, just about.
And why?
Not entirely true, but...
What went wrong for that? By that, what I mean is this. When did we lose that? When the graphics got so good in novels, or or computer graphics got so good in movies, because now I can tell you, I can be told a story in 2 hours.
Right.
When did we lose the love of reading? Because I think we have.
Yeah, the younger generation. Well, I don't know. My two daughters, two youngest ones, they love to read. They still do to this day.
But they got that from you,
Yeah,
right?
I think they got that from me. Yeah. And their mother. She reads.
And
as
I
well.
think a lot of it is just gone.
I hope not. That would be sad.
Well, I think authors are clamoring
Right.
to whatever society. That's why I think young adult is so. My wife loves young adult simply because they're easier to read. They're quicker. Because they're written for the young adult. There's no big words in it.
Right.
And I don't care what you say. The Hobbit was written for 9 to 12-year-olds, but The Lord of the Rings was not.
Right.
The Lord of the Rings is a tough read.
It is.
The
Too many names.
Silmarillion is even harder. It's not something that a 9-year-old would pick up and get. And yet now, though, we see, and I don't know if it's because of money, I don't know what it's because of, but young adult books, Insurgent, Hunger Games, The Vampire, oh my gosh, what was that, Twilight series.
Twilight series.
That people just went freaking nuts over that. Vampires were in.
Yeah.
And
I think they've faded off, though. Thank heavens.
And slowly but surely, if you look, our aliens are gone. Where'd they go? I mean, think of a popular book series, because everything has to be a series now. Nothing can be one book.
I have noticed that. It's always a trilogy or more.
And of course, with J.K. Rowling coming in through the Harry Potter series of taking us back to what you would consider a fantasy world.
Right, Harry Potter.
And the funny thing is, though, and see, I never understood that, because this fantasy world exists in the world today. It's not that Harry Potter was back in the early 3rd century.
I got you. He was just in a hidden realm.
Until he was a certain age, he lived amongst the Muggles.
I was going to say, don't say normal, because
he lived
a normal life.
amongst the Muggles. And so he's kind of wrapped. So is that fantasy?
Yeah, I would still call that one fantasy.
Okay, so there are these certain genres that people have, but everybody seems to be clamoring now, author-wise, to be the next thing.
They're trying.
Vampires, they were hot. And then of course you see Insurgent, like I was talking about. It really isn't different than Hunger Game. It's just kind of flipped, a little bit, whether it be Ender's Game or whether it be... Now, there was a book...
That was a good one. Ender's Game.
There was a couple movies that I saw that encouraged me to go back and read the book. And one of them, which was actually a series that I didn't know, and I'm not all the way through the series yet. Have you ever read The Giver?
I have not. My daughter has.
Did you ever see The Giver?
I have not. My daughter has.
Jeff Bridges is in it, and he's the giver.
All right, I think Jenna said that, but I have not seen it. Have not read the book.
Fantastic.
That's another young adult, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I would consider it a young adult. Yeah, but The Giver is kind of an older book.
Well, see, I only just started kind of reading those. The Hunger Games was actually my first one, because I picked up the first, and I'd been hearing a lot about it.
And so you read it.
Yeah, so I read it.
Right.
And I loved it. It was a great series.
And my wife did that as well as my son. Read all 3 books through in I think a weekend.
It took me a little longer.
Yeah, just sit there and read them and read them and read them. I'm sure it was longer than that, but it seemed that way of just, and then went to see the movies.
Right.
Right. Knew that they were coming out and thought, okay, I'm going to read those.
I always try to do that. If the movie's coming out, I try to read the book first. That's just how I like to do it.
And why is that?
So I have preconceptions going.
Okay, so you, and see, we get back to J.K. Rowling, and you get to the Harry Potters. I didn't want to see Harry Potter at all. I didn't really care about it at all and then it was, okay, I need to know if my kids is this okay for my kids to read and everything.
Right.
So we watched the first movie together.
Right.
And that was it. I was hooked.
Oh, did you read all the books?
I've read every book, probably.
I have not read a single book.
I think I've read every book at
I've
least
watched all the
2 or
movies.
3 times.
I've watched all the movies, haven't read a single book.
I've even listened to a couple of... I have probably listened to The Chamber of Secrets 20 times.
Books on tape?
Yep. Because when I worked in Los Animas, it would have to drive back and forth all the time.
That's just one person reading it? They don't do voices, do they?
Oh, they do voices.
And then Harry said,
he does.
Mother, may I please have another cup of soup?
Absolutely. And it's so good.
I've never done a book on tape. Never. Not once.
Jim Dale is the one who does the American versions of Harry Potter.
Right.
Fabulous.
Does he have an English accent?
Yes, he does.
Does he?
Oh my gosh. If you've never listened to Harry Potter on tape, we would do that with my son and we would fall asleep. We would go to the library and check out the CDs. I've probably listened to every one of the Harry Potters on CD. I've read every one of the books probably twice, at least 3 times for some of the ones in the beginning. And I've seen every one of the movies at least 4 times.
Oh, yeah. I've seen the movies quite often.
I've seen every one.
I haven't read a single book. Well, they're pretty thick. I picked up the first one and I was like...
Well, it started this way and got to be that way, and it got...
My wife read them all. She loved them.
It went from lighthearted to dark. It was almost like The Hobbit to The Return of the King. Right. It was darker and darker and darker. But I really think that we've lost that...
Love of books?
That love of books. And I think the movies... And I think the ease of seeing it on the screen or on your phone or whatever has ripped that book out of our hands because it takes time to do that. We have to. Unlike you, I think we are a society now that says, I'm too lazy to imagine. Just tell me what it's like.
Yeah, let me have it in a 2-hour increment.
Let me have it in 2-hour increments, and I don't have to imagine what that looked like.
Yeah, somebody else can do it for me.
Somebody, Josh Whedon, or is that his name?
From
Whedon? No, the directors of the Avengers.
Oh,
Josh Whedon.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's his name. Tell me how to. J.J. Abrams. Show me what Star Trek is like. I don't want to read about it. I don't want to imagine.
Yeah.
Tell me what it's like now. And that's what saddens me, I think, a little bit about it. When you talk in the nerddom and people who boast so strongly about their nerdiness.
Right.
Have only invested their time in certain areas.
Right.
Not the whole thing of, go back and read the book. Now, obviously, there are tons of people for their love of Star Wars, their love of Transformers, their love of Avengers, and they have spent their times in the comic books of them. So, I think there's a lot of people who have invested time, but I think there's a lot of laziness out there nowadays that says, God, you know how long it's going to take me to read this book?
I know.
It's going to take me forever. And I'm going to have to think, and I'm going to have to imagine. And to hell with that. And it really, I think it used to be the thing that hooked people. There used to be that love of, oh my gosh, there's a story, because that used to be all there was.
Right.
There was that time. Did you read as a child?
Oh, yeah.
Was it just comic books, or was it?
No. I read, at the time, when I was younger, I read a lot of Westerns.
Okay.
Louis L'Amour. Those type of Westerns, and usually the ones, I'm stumbling.
Yeah.
The history type, Daniel Boone, Davy Crockett. I loved reading about those kind of guys.
Now, see, when I was young, especially in elementary school, the only thing I would read were biographies.
Really?
I loved biographies, and that's what I would encourage anybody to read now. That has gone by the wayside, I think.
Right.
The idea of the biography. Because, oh my gosh, we're reading about, this is a real person. That's neither mythology or science fiction at all. That's just, you're telling me about...
That's history.
George Washington Carver.
Yeah.
You want to read a great... and then we get so thrown off because we confuse our young people with Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Slayer.
Yeah.
George Washington and the Knights of the Round Table, whatever it would be,
Yeah.
we've now confused. But true biographies of people who overcome Martin Luther King Jr. or Thomas Jefferson or Thomas Edison, I mean, any of those, read, and I think there needs to be a revival of science fiction imagination, because what I see now is it's such a small little clump. Superheroes,
Right.
or superheroes, or Star Wars.
Kind of does seem like
we just
superheroes have taken over.
We just keep doing the same thing over and over again. Ender's Game that came out, which was based on a book.
Yes. Good book. It actually surprised me at the end. I couldn't believe it. I was shocked. I mean, that's how good it was. It was written very well, and I mean, it was something new, I thought.
But we really have kind of lost that idea. We seem to be rehashing and talking about, where is the new science fiction? Where is the revival of old science fiction? So what I wanted you to do is to we're kind of start Terry's book club. So what I want to do, and we're going to put it on our website, nerdwaveradio.com. I want you to pick out a book that if you were to say to a nerd of any age,
right,
read this.
So
If you have a love of science fiction, if you have a love of science fiction, this is the book that we're going to read. We're going to make a section on Nerdwave Radio. Okay. We're going to put it on our Facebook, and we're going to say, this is Terry's suggestion. Read this science fiction.
Oh, okay.
What would it be?
A couple of... Well, oh boy, there's some classics.
I know there's some great stuff out there, but if you were to say to somebody, I'm going to read this and you'll be hooked on science fiction. This is what you need to start with right here.
Okay.
What would it be? And then we're going to put it on our Facebook. We're going to put it on Nerdwave Radio. What would it be?
Ooh, I'd have to look through all my books to see which one.
Well, we need one tonight.
Oh, crap.
Yeah. We need one tonight.
Does it have to be science fiction?
No. It could be anything.
Well, because I kind of like the books, too, that sort of make you think as well.
So give us a book.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let me go through my library.
Okay. While you're thinking about that, I want to introduce you to a new nerd website that I found.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty cool. It's called nerdsinbabeland.com. Nerdsinbabeland.com. Just type it in, nerdsinbabeland.com. Here's what it looks like. It's your source for news, updates, reviews, and all things cool and geeky, made for geek, made by geeks. So maybe you're talking a little bit about geekdom, and is there a difference? Maybe not. You should go and check it out, though. It has a bunch of cool things. You could buy things. It's got a place in there that you can support indie artists and local comic shops, which are obviously struggling right now. The comic. So it is a great nerd geeky website. Go and check it out. It's called Nerds in Babeland. Nerdsinbabeland.com. That's what it looks like right there on your screen. Go and check it out. I think it will be. I think you will really, really enjoy it. So, have you got something yet? Have you come up with something?
Well, I've been reading here lately. I've been reading a lot of. I went and forgot the guy's name.
Okay.
The writer of the War of the Worlds.
Orson Welles?
No.
He was the one who did it.
He was the director.
He was the director of it. Who wrote it?
I
don't know who wrote War of the Worlds. Do I need to find it?
Maybe because my phone's acting funny.
Okay, let's just type that in real quick. Who wrote War of the Worlds?
Well, Edgar Rice Burroughs. There we go.
Is that who it is?
Yeah. Actually, if you want to read a good series, read his A Princess of Mars.
Okay.
I mean, that's
how long of a series is it? I mean, is it like
let's see, that
a lot of books?
I'm trying to remember how many there are. That's more in a trilogy. Maybe 6 books.
Okay.
It's kind of a standalone though. The very first one is.
All right. So that's the book we're going to start with.
Sure.
And what's it called again?
A Princess of Mars.
A Princess of Mars.
Edgar Rice Burroughs. You can't go wrong.
Now, is it old?
Yes. Let's see. This one would be back in possibly the 70s or 60s.
Okay.
As I first started reading them when I was very young, young teenager. And it's one of the books that I think kind of gravitated me towards science fiction.
Look for it on our website at nerdwaveradio.com. What we're going to do is I will find it and we will put a link to it. I'm sure there's a link to it to Amazon.com. But one of the things that we're going to do is Nerdwave Radio. If you're listening to the show, send us an email at nerdwavetonight. Nerdwavetonight at gmail.com. nerdwavetonight@gmail.com. First one that we get, ask for the book. We'll find a copy of it and send it to you. Of the first one.
Okay.
What's it called again?
A Princess of Mars.
A Princess of Mars. Written by
Edgar Rice Burroughs.
Edgar Rice Burroughs. Nerdwave Tonight. Anybody who out there is listening, just email us, nerdwavetonight@gmail.com. Tell us you want the book. First one to give us an email. We will send you a copy and get you going on this reading of science fiction. Not just that, but just maybe a love of reading, because I would really love it if that were to come back again.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure authors all over the world would love that to come back again, so that they can put down their pen and stop writing the stupid screenplay, so they can get it on the big screen and maybe get it into the bookstores where you can sit down again and stop letting other people
do your imagining for you.
Exactly. Do your imagining for you. I think that's one of the things that we're missing. We're missing that in our youth a lot, I think, is that whole idea of that ability to imagine.
Right.
And so young kids, stay away from Game of Thrones. You don't need to see that. Maybe later on when you're older. Yeah. But we're going to do the Edgar Rice Burroughs, A Princess of Mars. Email us, nerdwavetonight@gmail.com. Also, if you can't remember it, just go to nerdwaveradio.com. We'll have it there. We'll also have it on our mobile page at m.nerdwaveradio.com. We're also going to put it on our Facebook. Terry's book pick of the month. Right there.
And actually, well, you know what? Well, this one was actually made into a movie.
Which most of the science fictions, I'm sure they were.
Yeah.
So
and a lot of people were like, "Oh, that's a ripoff of." I can't even remember what show it was. Like, well, no, technically, because this book was written before.
Yeah, because wasn't a movie out that John Carter? I mean, isn't that the one that you were talking about?
Yeah, that's his name, John Carter.
Isn't it the guy who goes to Mars?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I saw that movie, and I liked it. A lot of people didn't like it, but I thought it was good.
Pretty good.
It was okay. He could jump really high.
Yeah, because of the gravity being lighter.
So it's based on that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's made from that. I mean.
Oh, fantastic! I didn't know that.
See, so you should read the book.
I should read the book. I'm going to email myself and be the first one to get the book from Edgar Rice Burroughs. That's going to be
That'll work.
fantastic. So be looking for that. Again, nerdwaveradio.com, or email us at nerdwavetonight@gmail. First email that we get, we're going to send you that book so that you can start your love of reading of science fiction. I'm not saying you have to stop watching it on the screen.
No.
But read about it in the book, because there's fantastic science fiction, mythology. There's great books out there that encourage you to imagine. And I think that's the basis of being a nerd, is that ability to look at things and imagine things in a different way. Whether it be Transformers, you look at it and say, I'm not sure how that became a car, or I'm not sure how that car became a robot that actually looks like a human.
Yeah.
But people just absolutely love that. And maybe we can get some people reading. So be looking for Terry's book pick of the month. This month it's going to be Edgar Rice Burroughs' Princess of Mars.
Yeah.
We're going to put that out there. We're out of time. Next week, I don't know what we're going to talk about. We are going to talk about Age of Ultron, though. It's
Yes, I
out
will
here
watch it.
in
I will
our
go and watch it.
It is out now in our sleepy little town. So you can go and see it. We're going to talk about it. We're going to review it a little bit. We want to know what you think about it. I've already seen it twice. I thought it was fantastic.
You already watched it twice?
I've already watched it twice.
I've only seen it. I haven't seen it yet.
I actually saw it a couple days.
I gotta catch up.
Actually saw it a couple days before it came out.
Ooh, you cheated. Oh,
A little bit.
illegally.
No, I'm not
Well,
saying. I'm not
technically,
saying that
well,
I
it's
did.
not-
I'm not saying I did it illegally. I'm saying I had the ability to review the movie
so you did.
before it came out,
There you go.
and I thought it was fantastic. We want to know what you think. So join us next Monday at 8 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time for more Nerd Wave Radio. We're going to talk about Age of Ultron. Let us know what you think. Again, be looking to try and get that book, Edgar Rice Burroughs, A Princess of Mars. Go to nerdwavetonight@gmail.com. So for everybody here at Nerdwave, for Terry, for myself, we're going to go out with one of my most favorite songs. Annie Lennox singing Into the West, which is the song on the soundtrack of the movie After Return of the King. And everybody's crying. And it's so sad because we never thought that we would ever see this mythology again. And then, by golly, the dollars fell into place and Peter Jackson was able to make The Hobbit.
Yeah.
And we fell in love with the Misty Mountains. So we want to encourage you, check out our website. Once again, nerdwavetonight@gmail.com. We hope to see you next week. God bless.